Hello everyone and welcome to First Cry in Telenet. So today's topic is building cognitive flexibility in the early years. So before we start, I want to introduce myself. My name is Amrita Rajpal. I've been teaching for 22 years, but I've been learning my whole life, and that's why I have a company called Edu Learn Grow. I'm also a sports nutritionist. I'm an avid traveler. I'm an active Rotarian. I'm territory head for the Early Childhood Association, and I'm also founder of Edu Learn Grow. I'm co-founder of the ABCD show. So, welcome to today's workshop. And do I know if people are there? Can you all just sort of type something in the comment section, or can I see that? Okay, all right. So I don't know if I can see the comments, but welcome and let's start. So we're going to start with an activity. I'm going to be showing you this. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You're supposed to be reading the text, not paying attention to what is around you. All right? Oh, I'm so happy I can see people coming inside. Hello everyone. So we are starting with the activity. Is everyone there? Yeah, but okay, we'll start. So we're starting. I'm going to be showing you some text. I don't want you to pay attention to anything else. I want you to just look at the text and read the text and not get influenced by anything else. So you have 30 seconds to do this. Okay, this was an example of cognitive flexibility. So how was this activity for you? Could you do it easily? Was it difficult? Were you getting confused with the colors and with the text? Were you associating the colors and the text? So for some people it becomes very, very difficult to understand that this color is not related to this text. So here what I'm doing is I'm seeing purple, which is written purple, but I'm seeing the color as pink. Or I'm reading blue, but the color is not blue, it's green. So I think somewhere on the screen you may not be able to see it properly, but brown is orange. But our mind is so stuck, and our mind has pathways which associate things together, and it's very difficult to move your mind from one thing to the other thing. So if I have a pathway for colors and I'm seeing pink and I'm reading purple, I may not be able to do that because I'm only associating pink with pink. So like we said, some people find it difficult and some people find it easy. The ones who find it easy have cognitive flexibility in this case, but they may not have cognitive flexibility in other cases. So let's understand now what is cognitive flexibility and why is this whole thing so very important. Let's look at the situation we are in today. So we are in a situation where we haven't stepped out. I'm in Bombay and I haven't stepped out for 6 months at least. Right from March till now, I'm just in my house. So we were in lockdown, and after that when the lockdown has lifted, we're still too scared to go out. But offices are not working, schools are not working, children are at home. And all of us are doing things which are not part of our routine. And we are adapting to that. So there are teachers, and those teachers are so used to speaking to a classroom full of students. And now they're teaching children online. which is something they had never ever planned for. They're not even trained for it. What about parents? Parents also have never ever been stuck in the house looking after their children 24/7, not sending them to school, now playing multiple roles, that of, a housewife, looking after your house, being a working woman, looking after your child, and being a teacher. So we are multitasking and we're doing so many different roles which we didn't do earlier. We are also adapting ourselves to something which was not there. So everyone is going through a stage which is not what they were doing. And our brain needs to adapt to that. And that is what cognitive ability, flexibility is all about. Being flexible in your brain and adapting to different situations at different times. But cognitive flexibility is not only with COVID or not only with these kind of circumstances. We're going to be exploring a lot more about it later. So till we come to that, now let's understand what is this that we're going to be talking about. Can I talk about cognitive flexibility in isolation? Do I need to talk about my whole brain for you to understand this? Yes, all of us know that we have a brain, and in this brain we have so many different functions, and all these functions are interrelated. We just did one activity where we were associating things. So our brain is interlinked. Everybody knows about the left brain and the right brain. So we have a left brain and we have a right brain. So left brain is in charge of the logical reasoning. It's in charge of making lists, organizing itself, planning, and everything that requires reason and logic, numbers, all comes into your left brain. And then we have a right brain. And our right brain is all about creativity. Our right brain is all about imagination. It's about storytelling. It's about art and craft. It's about sculpture. It's music. It's dance. It's drama. And all that is part of my right brain. Now all of us know that both these brains have to work in unison. So we cannot only work with our right brain and we cannot only work with our left brain. We cannot be totally disorganized and live in a chaos, and we cannot be only organized and have no creativity. So we need to have a good sense of both of these things. Now that's not the only thing that there is in our brain. We have something called an executive functioning brain. So what is an executive function in our brain? An executive function is something that helps you to plan. It helps you to focus attention. It helps you to remember instructions, to juggle multiple tasks, and basically just sort of live your life productively and efficiently. There was this psychologist called Deborah Phillips, and she's from Georgetown University. And she said your executive functioning brain is just like an air traffic control system at the airport. So how many of you have seen that or can relate to that? What is happening in an air traffic control system? We have planes which are coming in from different places. We have planes which are going out to different places. Now we don't have only one plane coming and one plane going. We have multiple planes coming from different places. We have multiple planes which are going out from different places, right? And they're going to different places. Everything has to be scheduled because we cannot have them clashing into one another. So just imagine one plane coming in and one plane going out and they both clashing. What's going to happen? There's going to be a disaster. There's going to be chaos. And that's what your brain does. It makes sense of the madness. There are so many things that are happening, so many places that we are multitasking. And it has to make sense to make everything happen without conflict and without chaos. So that's the job of the executive functioning brain. Now the executive functioning brain has three components. it has a working memory, it has an inhibitory control, and it has cognitive flexibility. Now, all these three are interlinked. Just because our brain has different parts, they cannot work in isolation. So, all these things have to work together. So, now let me explain to you what these things are. So, we have a working memory. What is a working memory? A working memory is a memory that allows you to process and make sense of information which is happening now. So you are able to plan, you are able to manage a lot of information, you're supposed to sift out the distractions and focus on the task at hand. Let me give you an example of you making breakfast in the morning. So if you had to make poha for breakfast in the morning, you would have to organize yourself. And you would know that you have to put in the potatoes first for boiling first, because that will take the longest to cook. Then you will cut the onions and the chilies and put them in the pan. While that is happening, you will soak the poha and keep it ready. So you are multitasking, you are also prioritizing. So what needs to come first? What needs to come after that? What needs to come after that? So you are organizing yourself. And much before all this, you have to see if all the ingredients are there and they kept for you to be able to make this dish. So there are so many things happening. Now imagine you're in the middle of making breakfast and the doorbell rings and the phone also rings. So what is it that you're going to be doing? You have to answer one of them. Which will you answer? I can't see the chat right now, but I want all of you to write this down in the chat. I'm going to see if it's there. No. So write it down in the chat. For whatever you have written, you're going to have some logical explanation. So if you took the phone first, you possibly are expecting a call, and maybe it's an emergency, so you will take the phone first. If you answer the door, you don't want to keep the the person at the door waiting, and you want someone whoever's on the phone can call you back. So that is the logic you possibly applied. So all of us are using our logic, working efficiently, making sense of everything, multitasking, prioritizing. Maybe someone is singing somewhere while you're making your breakfast. Will you be sitting and listening to the singing? Will you be making breakfast? Or maybe you can do both. So your working memory has to be efficient for you to function, to make decisions, make choices, prioritize, organize, plan, focus, everything. What about a child? So a child sits to his artwork, and someone starts singing over there, or there is some distraction. He needs to have the ability to stay focused on his task so that he will finish it. Otherwise, for every distraction, he will be leaving the artwork and running somewhere else, or leaving whatever he is doing and running somewhere else. And will things be complete? No. So what we have to do is, we've got to have a working memory which is efficient, which allows us to make decisions, stay focused, keep distractions away, and stay on what we are supposed to be doing. The next thing that we have is an inhibitory control, the other component of our executive function. So what does inhibitory control mean? Inhibitory control is the ability to inhibit or to control your response. And all this has to be done by logic and by reasoning. So, if someone gets you angry, how would you react? Would you just go and slap that person? Oh, you can't do that. That's just not possible. That's not something that you can do, right? So you have to control yourself, and you have to make sure that you do not behave in a way which is not appropriate. There are also certain habits that we have to control. So what if you feel like digging your nose? Will you dig your nose anywhere? No. You will have to control yourself so that you don't dig your nose. And understand that this is not socially acceptable, and nor is it a hygienic habit. So for you to understand that and reason it out in your head, and also then to control it, is inhibitory control. Now look at children and see the situations they are in. Someone is playing with a toy and the child wants that particular toy. The child has to have inhibitory control because he can't push somebody else and take that toy away. He needs to understand that he cannot respond like that. So a child needs to know what is acceptable behavior, and he needs to have inhibitory control. He also needs to control his responses just like adults. So that is something which also needs to be developed. And now the third component which is part of the executive function is cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to adapt to a task or to a situation or to different circumstances. So we already spoke about COVID. We already spoke about how we all are in different situations and circumstances. We were never in this kind of situation. We didn't even plan for it. But now we are all dealing with it, right? So now that we are dealing with this, how well are we dealing with it? Do we have the cognitive flexibility to adapt to something which is new? Now, cognitive ability is not only about adapting to a situation like COVID. Cognitive ability is also about responding in your relationships. So if you have someone telling you something, how open are you to listening to the other person? To seeing what is the other person saying? Is it making sense to me? Can I follow that? Do you know people who are stubborn? And if you know people who are stubborn, then why are they stubborn? Because they want things their way, and they're not open to looking at anybody else's way. So that's why they have not developed cognitive flexibility, and they just want to see things in one particular way. They're not open to seeing other options available, or even to what someone else is saying. So cognitive ability, flexibility is also about looking at other people's point of view. Another situation I want to give you is, I was reading in the newspaper. Actually, I read every year in the newspaper when the 10th standard results come out, and you see that so many students have committed suicide after seeing their marks. Why do you think that happens? That happens because those children who commit suicide see their marks and see that this is the only way of being successful in life. So I need to get marks over here for me to be successful. This is my only pathway. I have no other pathway. They're not able to see different options, different avenues, different pathways, different suggestions of people. They're just stuck. So can you imagine how our brain is? Our brain is first just like a barren land. That's it. And then we put in these pathways with our thought tracks. We have only one kind of thought track, and we just make a groove over there. Now when you see a groove on the road, it becomes a road, right, on a barren land. And people keep going over there, and it becomes deeper and deeper, and it becomes easier to walk on that pathway, and you just naturally go on to that pathway. So now their thoughts are naturally on that pathway. What we need to do is have multiple pathways in our brain, so that if one pathway option is closed, we have different avenues to go to. We have different pathways to see. We have different options to explore. We have different things to think about. We have different thoughts, different perspectives. We can reason differently. We can look at things differently. So all these things are part of cognitive flexibility. So I wanted to ask you that, when I told you earlier that everything is interlinked, why do I need to have a working memory for cognitive flexibility? Can anyone answer, or can anyone even think about it? So you need to have a working memory, because if you cannot take control of your own life, if you cannot function in an efficient manner, how can you be flexible? So I want to give you this example. I know this boy, actually I know this man, and he is a grown-up man, and every day when he goes to work, he forgets something. So he goes down, and one day he's forgotten his keys, the next day he's possibly forgotten his wallet, his lunchbox, his tie, something or the other he has forgotten. And this is an everyday issue. And he's not a little child that you will say that, oh, he's forgotten, it's okay. But he's a grown man. Now there is something that is missing. So his executive functioning brain is not functioning the way it should be functioning. It is not something which is efficient. It's not something which is effective in helping him to produce results. It's making him waste his time. Go down, remember, then come to the office to go down and to come back up. Why? I seem to have lost the... Hello? Can you see me? Hello? I can't see the screen, so am I live right now? Okay, all right. So I'm continuing because apparently there's something which I can't see, but it's all right if you can. So let me continue. So if this man is not able to function properly and he is not able to manage his whole life, how is he going to be flexible? All his time is actually just going into this, into managing his own life. How is he supposed to look at other things? Also, if a person cannot control their own emotions and they're just too busy, if they have to, control themselves, as in not able to, if they just want to slap someone else, or they want to pinch someone else, or they want to pull someone else, then how are they going to be looking at different avenues? First, when a child has someone taking away his toy, instead of reacting, responding and getting into a fight, if he sits down and he sees, okay, my time with this toy is over and that child took it, now what can I do? Do I have options of playing with other toys? When he does that, he has cognitive flexibility. So it's very important to have everything. You cannot have only one. You have to have all of them together. So executive functioning as a whole is required. So now let's look at some of the activities that you can do to have this executive functioning brain develop at this point. And another thing is that by the time a child is 5 years old, a lot of this executive functioning has already developed. So it's a great time now to start giving them those experiences and telling them, what they can do. So let's look at some activities you can do. Playing these 1-minute games. Playing 1-minute games is really a lot of fun. You can, actually they're not 1-minute games only for children, but they are great for even adults, because I have played them at a lot of parties and we have had as much fun as what children would have. So put these marbles in a tub and have children pick out the marbles with their feet and put them in another container. When a child is doing that, the child is so totally focused. It takes only 1 minute, but for that 1 minute, even if someone is shouting or screaming or someone's calling, the child is absolutely focused on his task and he is involved in completing a task. Now this also creates pathways in our brain about completing a task, being focused, concentrating, doing something with involvement. So these are really nice games. You can even take a pot of mud and tell a child to put in ice cream sticks inside. Let's see how many ice cream sticks you can put into your pot in 1 minute. And time the child. So that becomes very, very exciting. Another thing that you can do is make a tower out of paper cups. Give assorted sizes of paper cups. Now when you give assorted sizes of paper cups, it's really nice because you see all these different sizes and a child has to discern. Should I put the bigger ones down? Should I put the smaller ones? Can I put 2 small ones and put 1 bigger one up? How am I going to make this look pretty? And how can I make it a tall tower? All of this in that 1 minute. So these are the activities that a child can really have fun with in just 1 minute. Another game you can play with is keeping a code. So give your child 2 crayons. So you give him red and you give him blue. Tell him A is red and B is blue. So if all of you have your crayons in front of you or you have 2 colored pens in front of you, you can try it right now. If you don't have anything in front of you, just imagine what I am saying and do it in your mind. Tell me if you find this easy or difficult. So the code for red is A and the code for blue is B. So when I say A, you mentally or physically pick up your red crayon and color on a paper. When I say B, you pick up your blue crayon and color on a paper. So A, B, B, A. So this may have been easy for you, when you're doing only 2 colors. Try doing it with 3 or try doing it with 4. So an 8-year-old child can even do it with 4 colors. And having to remember the code A, B, C, D and changing quickly is all about cognitive flexibility. These are simple activities. You don't require any material or anything to make this effective. But this is something that you can just do. Let's look at other things that you can do. So if you've been playing Simon Says, now just change the rules of the game. If you're playing it for the first time, then it doesn't apply. But if you have played it multiple times, your child has already understood that this is the way to play the game. Your child is on red alert when your child says that I have to listen to Simon Says and then sit down, or Simon Says and then stand up, and otherwise I don't have to do it. But now when you say Simon Says, we don't do anything. We only react when I say you have to do the task. So when I say Simon Says stand up, you will do nothing. When I say stand up, you will stand up. It's again rewiring your brain. So your brain is used to doing things in a particular way. Now you don't do it in that way, you do it in a different way. You don't listen to what you have already learned, but you unlearn everything that you have done. So another thing that you can do is play snakes and ladders like that. Play your Ludo like that. So what do you do in snakes and ladders? When you play snakes and ladders, you throw a dice, you get a certain number, and when you reach that number, if you see the head of a snake, you come down to the tail, and if you see a ladder, you go up. Now do exactly the opposite. When you see the tail of a snake, you go up, and when you see a ladder, you come down. So it's rewiring your brain. And can you imagine how alert you have to be, because you've always done it differently? Even when you're doing Ludo, when it's my turn, someone else will throw the dice, and then I will move the counters. So you are totally alert, you are focused, you have to remember all these things, because you cannot stay away from the focus, otherwise you will not be able to play the game. Now for little children, we all have our own ways of doing things. So even little children have their own routines, or they have their own way of doing things. Even something like having a bath. All of us have our own particular way of having a bath. Some of us like to soap ourselves from our head first, or some like to soap your face first. Consciously tell your child to go away from what he was doing and soap himself differently, or have a bath doing it differently. So if you start from up to down soaping yourself, start soaping yourself from down to up. Now this is something the child is not used to doing, and it will take some effort for the child, because the child will have to be focused, has to be conscious, and has to do things in a different way from the way he was doing it. So jumble up the order of whatever you're doing. Make a graph in your house with all your family members or with friends about which ice cream you like or which fruits you like, and then plot it out on the graph. So if you like strawberry ice cream, and your child likes chocolate ice cream, and your husband likes vanilla ice cream, and grandparents like another ice cream, just plot it out on a graph. So a child will be able to see that his view is not the only view. There are so many different views which are there, that people like different things, and this will give him a different perspective also, because you're not only going to be seeing your view in life, you have to see other people's views. And this is a great depiction for a child to know that my way is not the only way. There are so many different ways, so many different thoughts, and people have different likes, people have different dislikes. Even if you make Venn diagrams, take 2 hula hoops or draw 2 circles on the floor, take all your transport toys out, and ask your child a simple question. Tell me, put all the short-term vehicles in one place, put in one circle, put the long distance vehicles in another circle. Your child will start questioning himself, that where should I put the motorbike? Because a motorbike is for short distances. But you can tell him that people also take the motorbike and travel from one state to the other. So where would it go? It can go even to a long distance. It can also be a short distance vehicle. Having children think that things can go in from short distances and also be used for long distances. So there are overlaps in everything. So everything is just not black and white. So there are gray areas, and people can have different thoughts, and things can't fall into 2 brackets. So these are some small things which you can just do, anywhere with barely any materials. Other simple things you can do is have simple rules in your house. So when you enter the kitchen, you tiptoe. Now the child has to remember every time he enters the kitchen, he has to tiptoe. So just do it for one day. So today, whenever we enter the kitchen, we are going to tiptoe. So a child is going to remember that he is going to be going into this room and he has to tiptoe. When he goes to the other room, he has to have a password. Or if he wants to eat something, he needs to say a password. So play these small games and don't keep them for long term. Keep changing the password every day, or change it, or have a password only for 2-3 hours. Otherwise it's going to be very, very boring. So just keep changing and have cognitive flexibility for yourself also. Another thing you can do is, talk if one person is talking in a loud voice, the other person will talk in a soft voice. So if you call your child for lunch and say, lunch is on the table, and your child will have to say it in a soft voice, yes, I'm coming. So, have it for just a few hours, and it's a really funny game, but a child has to be very, very alert, and he doesn't have to speak in the way he normally speaks. So he is going to be speaking in a way which is different, and that is going to also activate his brain. Doing drama without talking. So all of us are used to having children playing with their doll set or playing doctor, but just doing drama, just dramatizing this whole thing without talking at all. So a child, checking the fever, putting the thermometer, checking, being surprised, writing a prescription, all this without words. So a child will use his face to express, will use his hands to express, his expression to, his eyes, his nose. Sometimes it's flaring because he's upset, or smiling because he's happy. So those are things that the child can do, because he's finding different avenues of expressing himself, different ways to say something. It's like exploring different ways of communication. We can have younger children sequence stories. So here they build their memory. So if you have a story like a thirsty crow and you have flashcards, let them tell you what comes first, what comes second, what comes next. So a child understands the sequence of events. If a child is little older, let him try to put it in backwards. What came last? What came before that? What happened before that? Now you can do this with about 3 or 4 cards, because then a child will easily be able to put it in sequence and also be able to sequence it backwards. Put something like a pen into a bag, and then have the child pull out the pen and tell you, if I didn't have to use this pen as a pen, how else could I use this? So then your child will start applying his mind. Maybe he can use it to make marks in the Play-Doh and make a design. So there will be different ideas coming out. And when a child is thinking and he is using this for something which is different and not something he is used to, he is making his brain flexible. He is making his brain adaptive. When you tell a child a story, then ask that child questions in the story. Ask the child, what if you were faced in this situation, what would you do? And let the child figure out what he would do. What if he was one of the 3 little pigs and the wolf came to his house? What would he do? Let him think. Would he run away? If he had to run away, where would he run? Would it be easier to call a taxi than to run? Would he have a mobile phone? What would be the situation according to him? You can play another game. Have actions for Spider-Man. So like this, just put out your fingers and this is Spider-Man. Make your hands like this for a Superman. And you can also put up 2 ears for a Batman. Now jumble up this order and call out, Batman, and do this. So you do the Superman action and say Batman. Now the child has to say only what you are, do the action only what you are saying and not what you are doing. So this gets the child to focus on you, on what you're saying, and exclude everything else. So this was the same activity that we did actually with the pink and the purple, because you're disassociating yourself and you're able to use your mind in a different way. So there are lots of things that you can do to just build up all this and get your child to think differently. Get your child to, use their mind in ways that they've not used, and build flexibility, see different perspectives, experience, people's experience being part of a story and thinking from the point of view of that character. And this builds flexibility. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, I can see some questions. So how do you curb down stubbornness in a child? So when is a person stubborn? When a person can only see their own point of view, right? So I am stubborn. Are only children stubborn? Or do you know adults also are stubborn? So I think, this can be anyone who is stubborn. But being stubborn happens for 2 reasons. Either because the child is too small and you haven't explained to the child, you haven't given the child that experience of, the wait time. So when I tell a child that come and eat dinner and the child is playing a game, the child is not going to listen to you instantly. Now that does not make the child stubborn, that he doesn't want to come. But when you give the child 5 minutes and tell the child, no, you have to come after 5 minutes, and then keep reminding in 5 minutes once, twice, thrice, and still the child doesn't want to come, then that child just wants to do his own thing. This could be for many reasons. Maybe the child just loves the game. Maybe he knows that you have your trigger point and he can take you for, granted. So you will have to find out, why is the child doing that? Is this child doing it just because he doesn't want to listen? Is the child enjoying the game too much? Do you have to set some boundaries and then, ensure that the child stays within those boundaries? Are you telling the child what is expected of him? That you can play only for 5 minutes? So all this depends on the age of the child and where the child is developmentally. Okay, does using a phone too much hinder a child's cognitive development? Yes, of course. The rays which are there in the phone are really not good, and there should be a limit to the screen time. A child cannot have screen time for more than 2 hours a day. That includes talking on the phone, playing games, and going through your online school and everything. So really, those rays are going to affect your child, and you cannot have your child being on the phone for a long time. They're bored and irritated most of the time because they're stuck at home. There is nothing new to learn and explore. Engaging them in household chores would help. See, I just give you a lot of activities that you can do. Simple things like those 1-minute games, making those graphs, making Venn diagrams, anything, all those things, giving them the code of a crayon. So there are so many things where you can have a password, where you can play things with just in a bag and use it in different ways. So there are various games that you can play. Yeah, they are bored at home. But the point is that you will have to play with them. You will have to do this, and you will also have to be cognitively flexible for you to do this. So, does parents active participation in play or anything the child can help in the development of the child? Does parents active participation in play? Yeah, it's very, very important. Now, a parent is the only one who is going to be able to guide the child. So here a child is alone, your child has no friends coming and going and is stuck without school. It's very, very important as you as a parent who is also now a teacher, who is now a facilitator for the child's learning. You're the person who is going to make all the changes in the child's life. It's very important for you to participate in the child's life, and that will make all the difference. As I said, the child is developing the executive functioning of the brain right now in this period from 2 to 5 and onwards. This is a very malleable time for the child. You can teach a lot of good habits, teach regulatory control, get your child to understand things, get your child to see different avenues, different perspectives, know that people are different human beings. I remember I had gone out and there was this child, and this child was about 15 years old, and I had gone to visit a friend, and the child was 15 years old, and she told her mother, "Oh, it's your birthday coming, but do adults really celebrate birthdays? Do they do anything at all?" Now this mother, this friend of mine, had done everything for her children. The children didn't even understand that she may be having needs or wants to have people wish her or give her flowers or to do something at all, because they had never seen that. It's very important for you to have your child to see that everyone has different likes, different dislikes, different experiences, has different needs. So they have to be able to see different things, to see different perspectives. Here, this child only thought that she was a person who had to be looked after because she was the child, and that child had no responsibility towards parents. So that is not okay. But all this can be taught at this point. Ranjit Anukampa says, can the TV do as much harm as the mobile screen? So Ranjit, the mobile screen is very small. It strains your eyes much more than a TV. But there is a limitation to the amount of screen time. What happens when a child is looking at a screen? Your child is only taking in sensory input. There is something which happens to the brain, and the brain goes into limbo. Just see your own situation if you have to see TV for 2 hours. After that, do you feel active or do you feel lethargic? In my experience, I feel so lethargic after I watch a movie or I've seen TV for so many hours. You cannot get up and suddenly start doing some physical activity or whatever, because you're still in that lazy mode. Now, children's mind is also going to sleep because they're only taking in information and there is no active participation either in a TV or in a mobile. That's why it is so addictive, because it's only sensory input coming in. So, if you have a participation which is happening, there is still something. You're playing a game where you're utilizing your mind or something like that, then it's better. But yes, the TV is better than the mobile because the mobile screen is really small. So are there any more questions? I can't see any more. I'm still waiting if someone wants to type out any questions. Okay, I hope this was of value to you. I hope you will sit and work with your child and develop working memory, develop flexibility, cognitive flexibility with your child. Help your child see different perspectives and participate in your child's growing up years and molding and being there to shape your child. So it was lovely being over here on First Cry and Telenet. Bye bye, and I hope to see all of you again soon.